Hey everyone, so we are back and over here in the last video actually we created validation for our sign up form, and when we are submitting this form actually we also got the success response, but instead of getting redirected to the next page, which is the verification page, we were still on the sign up page. So first of all, what we are going to do, let's open up our code base, and over here we need to go inside auth.js slice. Okay, now inside this slice you can see when we are calling this register function and we're getting the successful response. Actually, we need to check inside we need to actually redirect the user to the next page. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are going to add navigate as an argument to this register user function. Okay, so let's do that over here. So here we are going to first of all get access to the navigator. So let's get navigate, and we need to go to the signup.jsx, and we are going to pass this navigate as the second argument. Okay, and please make sure that this navigate is coming from calling use navigate. Use navigate is a hook provided by React Router DOM. You can see it's imported at the top over here. Now inside auth.js, after we got access to the navigator, okay, we need to make sure that we are navigating the user to the next page in the finally block. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to check if there is no error. So let me write if not get state. We have to call the get state, okay, to get the access to the state. And now on the state, I am interested in the auth property. Inside auth we have the error property, so we are basically checking if inside the auth slice we don't have an error, then we're going to navigate the user to the next page. So here I'm just going to write navigate, call this. Okay, now inside this we need to pass the path to which we want to navigate the user, so that will be auth slash verify. Okay, please make sure that the spelling is correct. And after that I also want to add this email in the query. So here I'm just going to do string interpolation because we are using backtick. So we can write dollar sign curly bracket and then write some JavaScript inside it. You all know that inside form data we are getting two things, actually four fields: email, name, password, and confirm password. So from this form data I'm just going to write over here form data dot email. Okay, so now the user will be redirected to the next page when we get a successful response. Okay, and now we can just again check that. But before doing, the check again, what I would like to do is let me just make sure that the application is running successfully, and let's also make sure that our backend is running. So in the last video, we saw that our backend crashed because of this error, missing credentials for play. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically go to my config env, and now I'll actually update my node mailer app password. So this is the email that I'm using, okay, in order to send the emails. And here I'm just going to go back to my browser, and over here when we click on our profile, you will see this manage your Google account option. Click on that. Okay, and a page is going to load like this. Now inside security, please make sure that you have turned on two-factor authentication. Okay, only after that search app password in the search bar above. Okay, so search for app password and you will get this option app password under security. Click on that. Okay, now after authenticating your account, you'll see this screen where you can create an app password. So I'm just going to create another app password. Let me call it test chatty. Okay, and I'm just going to create it. Now after the password is created, you'll see a screen with some password, 16 characters password like this. You have to copy it, and before copying it, don't close this window because it's only going to be displayed one time. So I'm just going to copy it now and click on done. Okay, and after recording this tutorial, actually I'm going to delete this password, so don't try to use my password. Okay, create your own in the way that I have taught you. Okay, so after doing this, let's also make sure that we are able to get this node mailer user and app password inside our mailer.js. So here I'm just going to console log these two things. So let me just write node mailer app password, comma node mailer user. Okay, now our server is going to start. Okay, we need to start it manually, so I'm going to run npm run start dev, and then you can see actually these two values are coming as undefined. Okay, so that means uh, this is not working. Process env node miller user and app password that we have written, it's not working. Let's see why it is not, you know, uh, getting the values from config.env file. First of all, we need to make sure that the path property is correct. So I'm going to write over here dot slash. Actually, it's not, you know, suggesting. So we can just check it manually that we are going to go one step up. Okay. And on the same level where we have the services folder, we also have this config.env. So I'm just going to write config.env. Okay. And still it's coming as undefined. So for now, actually, I'm just going to copy these two values from here. Let me just get these two values. And I'm just going to, we can, you know, fix this thing later on. But for now, since we want to continue with our logic, so I'm just going to paste it over here. Let's make it a string and I'm going to replace it with colon. Okay. Actually, not colon, but equal to sign. Here, I'm just going to write const in front of it. Similarly, let's make the change over here. Const node miller app password. Before deploying the application, we are going to actually separate to the environment variables, and I'll show you how to do that on render. So now you can see this thing is configured correctly. So we can now start sending emails. Okay. So I'm just going to close all of these files. Okay. Over here, and let's also collapse this thing. We can see our server is running successfully on localhost port 8000. So I'm just going to go back and over here. Now we have also fixed the navigation logic that when we get a successful response, the user should navigate to the next page. Okay. So let's now try it out once again. And there is one more thing that if you know, like someone was asking in the comment section, like how to connect to MongoDB, MongoDB Compass actually. So I have already showed you how to create a MongoDB database. Okay, you just have to create your account on MongoDB. Okay, then you'll see a dashboard like this. Here you have to go to the database option, click on create cluster, click on this create button. Okay, and over here you'll see an option like this. So since we are, you know, just developing our application, so you have to use this. So you have to use this M0 free cluster. Otherwise, if you are, you know, thinking about launching it officially or using it in production for a business, then you can use this paid tier M10. Okay, here I'm just going to leave the name as it is, cluster 0. I'll use the provider AWS and the region which is closest to me, Mumbai South. Okay, now I'm just going to click on create deployment, and here it's asking me for proving that I am a human. Okay, so after this, the deployment will be created. It will actually take some time. But in the meantime, you have to create your username and password. So these are very important. Okay, you have to copy and save it somewhere safe. Again, I'm going to tell you that don't use this credentials of mine because after this video is published, I'm going to remove this. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the username. Okay, let's go back to our config env. Here, I'm just going to write MongoDB username. Okay, MongoDB username, that is, let me just get it again. This is my username coding monk22. Okay, and my password, it's this. So I'm just going to copy it and let me write over here MongoDB password. Okay, and this will be equal to like this. Okay, so now we have copied and pasted these things, so we can click on create database user. Okay, then after that we have to choose a connection method. So in order to connect with you know, our MongoDB Node.js backend, you have to click on this drivers option and then choose Node.js, select version 5.5 or later. Okay, now you see right now our cluster is actually provisioning, so it's going to take some time. After it's done provisioning, we are going to see a URI that we can use, so we can come back to it later. For now, let's continue with rest of the things. So I'm just going to navigate back to my project, and let's just make sure our server is running successfully and also the client side. So let me check. Yes, it's running. So we can go back to the browser, and over here, once again, I'm going to try to create an account. Okay. So here I'm just going to enter the full name. Let's write Shreyans Shah. Okay. Then email. Here actually I'm entering my a valid email, because I we are going to receive an OTP. So it's important that you are not filling any dummy email. It has to be a real email. Otherwise, you'll not get OTP. And over here, we need to fill the password. So I'm just going to choose a simple password so that I can remember it. And we have to confirm the same password over here. Let's click on create account. You see it's saying submitting. After that, it says OTP sent successfully. So we have to go to our email provider, and here I'm just going to see if I received the OTP or not. I'm just going to check it on my mobile phone. So let's see. It's still not delivered, but it will come soon. Let's also check in our backend if it was delivered or not. So here you see it says that email sent, and we have also got this ID, message ID, that was delivered. So let me just check my spam folder. Maybe it's there. Yes, it's in my spam folder. So you should check your spam folder, okay, when you are delivering emails using NodeMailer, because otherwise, like there is a possibility it will be in spam. And there is one thing that you should notice over here, that this input is right now not ready to receive the input, because I can type all the characters in just one field, okay, and there is not even some limit. I can just type any character, so this is not correct, okay. And by default, what should be the behavior when I type some digit over here? The control should shift to the next one and the next one and next one. And similarly, when I remove the some digit, the control shift backward. So that should be the default behavior that we want from the OTP input. So that means we need to fix that thing now. And also please note that on the top we have access to our email. So we are going to get the OTP from the input and the email for which we are doing the verification from this query. So let's now go back to our code base. So this is our client side, and here we have our verification.jsx. Okay, so inside this verification page, now we need to prepare our input. So first of all, you can see that this is the form, and it contains it's basically rendering four input components. Okay, four input elements basically, which are receiving text. So we are going to now start making changes to this component. First of all, let's add a reference to the input. Okay, so here I'm just going to write input refs. Okay, and this will be equal to use ref. Okay, now this use ref is a hook from React, and here I want to store an empty array, because this is going to store reference to each input, and we have total four inputs. Okay, now let's also get access to the email from the top. So I'm just going to write the search query. I'm going to get access to email from there. So let's write new URL search params, URL search params. Okay, and we are going to call it. Then inside this we need to pass location dot search. Okay, and then we are going to call the get method on it, and the property that we want to get has this key email. So now we'll have access to the email. Okay, then here let's just write that when we get on this verification page, I want the first input to be in focus. So how we can do that? We have to make use of use effect hook. Okay, now this hook is going to be the logic inside it will be executed on the first when the component gets mounted for the first time, and also when the dependency changes. Actually, I just want the this callback to run only one time when the component is mounted, so I'm not going to pass any dependency inside it. Okay, now here let me do some check. So I'm just going to check if input refs dot current 0. That means if we have the if the value of first input ref is not undefined or null, then what we are going to do? Then we are going to write input refs dot current, and we are going to get the first input ref. Okay, and on that we're going to call the focus, so that it's activated, it's in focus when the component gets mounted. Now let's take care of the rest of the logic. Okay, so here actually we are going to write a lot of logic. So first thing is, let me just write a comment what we are going to do over here, and also what this line is doing. Let me write that in the comment format as well. So here I'm going to write automatically automatically focus on the first input. So this is what's going to happen. Okay. Let me also explain it to you visually. So if you just go back to the application, then what is going to happen when you get to this page, this input will be, it's the cursor is going to blink over here and you'll see uh, blue border over here. So that means this first input will be in focus automatically. That is what this use effect is going to do. Okay. That's its job. Then the next thing is here, we also need to actually add a resend button. Right now, you see this resend button is there, but we have to, show a 60-second timer. You can actually change the time, but I'm going to show a 60-second timer. So we need to disable it for the 60 seconds. So here I'm going to write that logic. So let's write timer effect, timer effect for disabling the resend button, for disabling the resend button. Now, what we are going to do over here, let's write use effect. Okay. And here I'm just going to, first of all, let's create a state as well. So I'm going to write over here. We need to actually keep track whether the presend button is currently enabled or disabled. So we are going to make use of use state for that. So inside use state, by default, I'm going to, set true. Now, so the default value is true. And here I'm just going to write resend disabled. So by default, when we get on this page, the resend will be disabled for 60 seconds. Here I'm going to, create a function name called set resend disabled. And this function will be used to update the value of resend disabled. Okay. Now the next thing is inside this use effect, I want it to run whenever this resend disable gets updated. So each time this state gets changed, I want this callback function to run. Okay. So what we are going to do inside this use effect callback, first of all we need to check the condition. If the resend disabled is true, then only we are going to execute this logic that I'm writing over here. And the logic is we are going to create a set interval. Okay, and we'll get the interval id interval id as a result, as a return value. So here I just need to call set interval. Now on this we are going to first of all pass this callback function and the interval. So I want this interval to run every 1 second. Okay, so here we are passing actually the value in milliseconds. So each second I want to update the timer, so that is why this set interval is going to run each second. Okay, now inside this we are going to call set timer. Okay, now this set timer, it's going to we are going to create this. Okay, timer and set timer. So we'll get the previous value. Okay, and what we are going to do, we are going to check if the previous value is greater than 0. Okay, if the previous value is greater than 0, then we are going to just reduce the number of second by 1. So let me write previous minus 1. This is what we are going to return. Okay, otherwise, and over here we are going to do set resend disabled. Okay, otherwise if this condition is not true, then we are going to set resend disabled to false. Okay, that means you can resend OTP again, and we are going to return 0 in this case. Okay, that means 0 seconds. So this is how we are going to update the number of seconds left. Okay, and after this what we're going to do inside this curly bracket, we have to, we are going to return a function to clear the interval. So here I'm just going to write clear interval, and inside this I'm going to pass the interval ID. So let's write interval ID. So this is our cleanup function, which is going to make sure that the memory is freed up before this component unmounts. And let me also write what is happening over here. So we are going to simply enable the resend button, enable the resend button when timer hits 0. So when the timer hits 0, the resend button will be, enabled again. Now let me also make sure that we are creating the timer over here in order to keep track of the number of seconds left. So let me write timer comma set timer, and this will be equal to use state, and this time is actually going to start from 60 seconds. So the initial value will be set to 60. Okay, Now we have this thing. Okay, we also have the access to email. We have added the functionality to automatically focus on the first input. This is for the timer effect, so that we can enable and disable that resend button after each 60 seconds. Then here we are going to create a function called handle change change input. Now, whenever the input gets changed, this function will be invoked. Okay. So whenever there is some change inside the input, this function will be invoked, and we are going to get access to the event, which is E and the index. Okay. Now, here I'm just going to write const value. Now this value will be derived from this event. So I'm going to write e dot target dot value. That is the value. That is how we get the value out of the input. Okay. Now, over here, we need to write a condition. Actually, this is going to be, you know, uh, a regular expression. So here, I'm just going to write the condition, then I'll explain what is it. Okay. So let me write uh, this b dollar and then forward slash. So this is a regular expression, and we're going to call test on it, and we'll pass the value. Okay. So what we are doing over here, we are checking if it is a valid digit input or not. So valid digit input. We are checking the input value that we got. It was a valid digit or not. If we got a valid digit, then I'm going to call set value. Okay. Now we need to actually the set value is going to come from reactive form. So please wait for that. It's not, it's not from the user state. It's going to come from hook form. So this set value is not defined yet, but we are going to do so very soon. So what we are going to do here, I'm just going to do string interpolation. Let's write OTP. Okay. And inside the OTP, I'm just going to, make use of this square bracket notation. Then dollar sign, curly bracket, I'm just going to write index. Okay. And then the value, okay, the value that we want to set for that particular, the input. And here I'm also going to write should revalidate. Okay. So let's write re, should validate actually, should validate true. Okay. So now this field will be validated after it's set. Okay. And here I'm also going to do one more check, and that is if the index is greater than 3. So that means less than 3 in this case. So when we are typing and the index is less than 3, that means we are at either 0, 1 or 2. That means these three inputs. Then what we are going to do, we are going to keep shifting the focus to the next element. So that is what we are going to write over here. I'm going to write input refs dot current dot, and then we are going to select the next index, which is index current index plus 1. And on that, if it is not in undefined or null, we are going to call the focus method. Okay, so this is how we are going to send after a digit is entered in an input, we are going to shift the focus to the next input. Okay, so this is it if we if the entered value is a digit. Okay, now here we'll also have another case, which is else if. So we are going to check if the value entered, if it is an empty string, that means a space. uh, so what we are going to do here, we are basically handling the backspace key. So when we press the backspace key, the value will be this. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, we are going to set the value. We are actually going to remove that digit. Okay, so here I'm going to write the same thing that we written over here, OTP and the index. Let's just copy it from there. Okay, so for this particular field, we want to set the value to null. Okay, and after that we also want to shift the focus to the previous element. Now in order to shift the focus to the previous element, we are going to write a condition over here. First of all, we need to check that the index is greater than 0. That means we only need to shift the focus when it's not the first element. Okay, it can be the second, third or fourth element. Now along with this, we also need to place one more condition, and that is here we are going to check e dot native event. Okay, native event dot input type, and this should be equal to delete content backward. Okay, delete content backward. So when this event happens, okay, the native event, it's equal to delete content backwards. Only in that case we are going to shift the focus to the previous element. And in order to do that, we just have to copy this line and just reverse this plus to minus. We have to just decrease one index and call the focus on that. And over here, let me just also write that in the comment format that what we are doing, we are just shift focus to next input, shift focus to next input, and over here we are shifting the focus to the previous input. Shift focus to previous input. Okay, shift focus to previous input. Now let's also create our the schema. So here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to write the schema for validation. So let's write a schema. Let's create it like this: const OTP schema, and that should be equal to yep. First of all, we need to get this yep library before using it. So I'm just going to copy it from sign up page. So let's get these three things: yep, use form, and yep resolver. I'm going to copy these three imports and paste it over here. Now we can just simply write yep dot, and then we need to create an object. So object, call it, and then call schema on it. Okay. So yep dot object dot shape. Okay, this is how we are going to create the schema. And now inside this, we only need to store one thing, and that is OTP. Now this OTP is actually an array. So here I'm going to write array. Okay, and here we need to also specify the type of array. Okay, that means what is the type of each input inside this array. So I'm going to write yep dot string. Each input is going to get a string. Okay, and that string should match this regular expression. Now again, we are going to make use of the same regular expression, which is for checking the digit. Okay, so this is just going to make sure that we are entering a digit inside this. So if the user doesn't enter a digit, we are going to tell them that it must be a digit. This is the error that is going to show up, okay, when the user doesn't enter a digit. Now after this, we are also going to specify the length of the array, which is 4. So here I'm just going to write OTP must be exactly 4 digits. Okay, OTP must be exactly 4 digits. And let's also make it required. So I'm just going to write required, and let's also fill in the error message if the user tries to skip this field. So I'm going to write OTP is required. Okay. Now let me just format the document, and you can see this is our OTP schema. And then the next thing we can do is also over here, we are using this location, but we haven't created this location. So let me just try it over here: const location, and that should be equal to use location. Okay, use location. You can see it's another hook from React Router DOM. Okay, and in order to dispatch action, we are also going to need dispatcher. So let me create dispatch like this: const dispatch equals, and this should be equal to use dispatch. Use dispatch is a hook from React Redux. Okay, now after we have created all these things, let me just make use of use form in order to create a React hook form instance. So I'm going to write use form, and inside this we need to pass some configuration. So let's make use of curly bracket, and the first thing it needs is the resolver. Here we are using yep resolver. So inside yep resolver, we are going to pass the OTP schema that we created over here at the top, this one. Okay, and after that, let's also specify the default values. So here I'm going to write default values. Now this default values, it just have one field, which is OTP, and OTP is an array of strings like this. So I'm just going to write 4 strings over here, and all of these strings are empty. You can see that. Okay, so this is our now we have initialized the form, and we are going to restructure few things out of it. So let me just write on the left side const inside curly bracket. We are going to get, first of all, control. Okay, after that we are going to get the handle submit function, then set value in order to update the value of field by their name, and then we are also going to get get values, and we are also going to get the form state. Now from the form state, we are going to just restructure one property called errors. Okay, so that we can display the errors inside our UI. Okay, if any of the any of these rules gets violated, then we'll show some error. Now, after doing this, you can see now we also have created this, set value that we are using over here. So we are just, writing the OTP and the index that we want to update, and we are providing the value in both cases. Okay. Now we need to now work on this JSX part. Okay. So let's create this JSX. Before that, I also remembered one more thing, that we need to create the on submit function. So here I'm just going to write on submit. Okay, on submit, and inside this on submit we are going to get the data. Okay, now this data is actually going to contain just one field called OTP, which is actually going to be an array of strings. So what we are going to do, in order to get the final OTP out of that array, we are going to get the data. Okay, now on this data we have the OTP property. Since OTP is an array, so we are going to call the join method on it, and I want to join all the strings without any space or any comma or anything like that. Just combine them all. So what this line is going to do, it's going to combine. Let me write combine the four digits. Combine the four digits into one string. So this is what we are doing on this line. Okay. Then after this, we are going to write a try and catch block. So let me write try catch. Here in the catch block, we are also going to catch the error. So let me just console log that error. If we get any error, console.log error. And here, let me just write verification failed. Okay. But in the try block, what we are going to do, we are going to just dispatch a function, dispatch an action actually. So here I'm just going to write dispatch. Now this is the dispatch coming from this line number 20. Okay, and the action that we want to dispatch is inside this auth.js. So you can just see we created this verify OTP, which is actually requesting two things: form values and navigate. And this form values is going to, you can just check on the backend what is the structure of that form values. So if you go to the routes auth.js and you look at this verify OTP controller, then you can see the request body is expected to have email and OTP. So that means this form values is expected to be an object containing true properties, email and OTP. So we can go back to our verification page, and inside this dispatch, first of all we have to call verify OTP, and it's going to come from Redux slices auth. Okay, now inside this, the first thing we need to pass is an object containing the email and OTP. Let me tell you that this email is coming from the URL. So you can see we have extracted the email, and the OTP, it's going to come from this line number 85. Okay. Then the next thing we need to pass is the navigate, because when the user successfully, verifies the OTP, actually the email using OTP, they will be redirected to the dashboard page. So that is why we need this navigate. Also inside of auth.js, let me check when the uh, okay, so when this process completes successfully, we are navigating the user to dashboard, and we are also displaying the error and success toast notification. So everything is correct right now except for this form. So now here we need to actually write on submit. So when this form gets submitted, we have to first of all call the handle form submit. So this is the function that we want to call, handle submit. So on submit, handle submit. Okay. Now inside this handle submit, we are going to pass on submit, which is this function that we created, that is going to receive the data. Now here we need to actually do one more thing. On this resend button, I want to dispatch another action. Okay, so let's take care of this one first. So button resend over here, what we are going to do, first of all, let's see, it only has this class name text primary right now. Let me also specify the type of this button, and that will be button. Okay. Now after that, here I'm just going to write disabled, and when this should be disabled, when this resend disabled is set to true. So I'm just going to write over here a resend disabled. Okay, when this is true, then this button should be disabled. And how we are going to actually handle sending another OTP. So here I'm just going to write handle resend OTP. Now this is some function that we haven't created yet, but we need to create it now. Okay, so I'm just going to go to the top where I have this return. Okay, so before returning the JSX, I'm going to create another function. I'm going to call it handle resend OTP. Handle resend OTP. Okay, and this is actually going to be an asynchronous function because we are going to make the API call. So over here, what we are going to do, first of all, we are going to make sure that we reset the timer each time we send an OTP. So reset the timer and disable the button after you click on this button. Okay, the resend button I'm talking about. So here I'm just going to write set disabled, set recent disabled true. So when we click on this button, first of all, I have to disable it, and also we are going to again set the timer back to 60 seconds. So let me write 60. Okay, then here I'm just going to write try and catch block again. Okay, in order to catch the error if it happens. Now over here again we are going to just write console.log, and actually let me just write console.error because we are logging the error, and here I'm just going to write error resending OTP. Okay, and let's also log the error object. Okay, now here inside the try block I'm just going to dispatch an action, and the action name you can see from auth.jslice. It's called resend OTP and it just needs the email. Okay, so here inside verification I'm going to go back and write resend OTP. You see it's going to import it from Redux slices auth. Okay, now it's auto imported at the top. I'll show you, and we need to pass email inside it. Okay, let's confirm that it's there at the top. So you can see resend OTP and verify OTP at the top, imported from Redux slices auth. Then over here inside this handle resend OTP, we should also, log to the console that OTP is resent successfully. OTP resent successfully. Okay, and let's also make sure that we are displaying a toast notification when we resend the OTP. So here, yes, we are displaying a success message and also an error message appropriately. So now this thing is also done. We have handled the recent OTP as well. So the next thing and the final thing that is left over here is to handle the button and also this input. So let's first take care of the button. Okay. So on this verify button, I'm just going to remove this on click, and let's set the type of this button to submit. Okay. You can see there can be these three types: reset, submit, or button, and we want submit. And you should also make sure that this button, submit button, is actually inside the form. Okay, now we can do one more thing. We should disable this button when the user submits the form. So here I'm just going to write disabled, and this should be disabled when the form is submitting. We haven't actually got this state from the form state, so let me just try it over here. Form state, I'm going to write is submitting. Okay, and also let's get the is loading state from our auth slides. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this line from sign up. Let's paste it inside this verification component. Let's also make sure that we have access to the use selector inside this component. So you see this use selector is now imported from React Redux. Now we are going to also make use of this is loading state. So I'm just going to write the button should be disabled, submit button should be disabled when either is loading is true or is submitting is true. Okay, let's also make sure that we are updating the text over here. So I'm just going to check if is loading is true or is submitting is true. Then in that case we want to display submitting. Okay, so that the user knows, okay, the form is getting submitted. And in the other case, when this is not true, we want to display the verify. Okay, so this is how it's going to work. Now there is just one last thing left, which is to handle the inputs. Okay, so let's see how we're going to handle the inputs. First of all, before taking care of that, I would like to do one thing, and that is to display the error message. Now in order to display the error message, we are just going to check if we have errors on this OTP field. Then what we are going to do, we are going to take help of the paragraph element, and inside this we are just going to display the errors dot OTP dot message. Okay, and let's also give some styling to it. So here I'm just going to give it class name. First of all, margin top 2, that is 8 pixel. You can just hover over it and see it's 8 pixel. And also I'm going to give it this red text color, so text red, because it's going to display the error message. Now let's take care of the input fields finally. So you see here we are actually rendering 4 inputs. Okay, array of length 4 and we are mapping over it. And what we need to do, actually, I'm just going to, comment out this input for now. Okay. So let's comment out this input, and what we are actually going to return from it, this will be a controller. Okay. Now this controller is a component. Okay. Controller is a component that is going to come from React hook form. And uh, let me just show you that over here, where we have written use form, we are also going to get the controller. So I'm just going to write this component over here, controller from React hook form. Let's just make sure that it's correctly imported at the top. Yes, you can see it's coming from React hook form. It's a named input, sorry, named export. Okay. Now inside this controller, we need to pass a few props. Okay. So let's see what they are. First of all, let's pass the key, which will be the index since we are mapping over this array. Okay. And the index is the only unique thing over here. So this is just for the optimization because we are going to render several controllers. Okay. Now, after that, we also need to provide a name to each input. And the name, it's actually going to be a variable. So let's use this curly bracket and backticks. So the name will be OTP and then the index value. So here I'm just going to write dollar sign and then the current index. Okay. So this will be the name of each field. Then also we need to, configure the control manually. Now this control is actually coming from use form hook. You can see when we call this use form hook, then we got access to the control over here. Okay. So we are just mapping the control to this controller uh, component. Okay. Now after that is done, the last field we want is render. Okay, that means what input we should render over here. So here first of all let's create a callback. Okay, and we need to return an input from here. Actually we are going to also destructure the field. So let me destructure the field over there. Then I'm just going to copy the input from here, copy it and paste it over here. Let me also uncomment these lines. Then we need to make several changes over here. First of all, on this input we are going to destructure all these field props. Okay, and if you notice I removed the key property. Okay, so we have we have to destructure all the field properties over here inside the input as props. Then the type will be set to text. Then we also need to set the reference because we are making use of reference input refs over here. Over here, you can see this is getting used many times over here as well. So we need to set up this input refs correctly. So what we are going to do, we are going to write over here ref, and then we are going to get the create a callback. We'll get the element, and what we are going to return from here is we are going to write inside parenthesis input refs dot current dot current, and then we are going to check get the current index. Okay, and then that will be equal to el. Okay, so this is how we are assigning refs to the input. So let me just write it in the comment format so that it will be easier for you to understand and revise it later. So I'm just going to write refs to inputs assign refs to inputs. Okay, then after this is done, we already have written a lot of class names. Let me actually word wrap this. So you can see there are lots of class names over here. Okay, then we are going to just also add on change over here. So let me write on change. So what happens when the input changes? We are going to get the event, and then we are going to call the handle change input. Okay, and here we need to pass the event and the current index value. Okay, then we also need to uh, handle this on key down event. So here we'll again receive an event e, and inside this what we are going to do, we are going to make some check. Okay, so first of all we are going to check if the key that was pressed, is it backspace or not. Okay, so we are going to check if it is backspace, and we are going to also check another thing, get values. Okay, get values, and over here we are going to again do string interpolation. So I'm just going to write OTP, and then inside a square bracket let's write the current index value. Okay, so I'm just going to compare this get values, the value that we got with this empty value. Okay, actually this thing. Okay, so we are simply writing get values, and we have passed the OTP and the current index over here. And actually this one is actually extra, so I have removed that, and we need to place that over here. Okay, so this is the condition that we are checking. Now what this condition is basically telling us that whenever a key gets pressed, okay, then we are checking if it is a backspace key. If we hit the backspace key and the current OTP input has a value null, then in that case we are going to actually shift the focus to the previous element. So here I'm just going to write, let me write over here, shift focus to previous input, shift focus to previous shift focus to previous input if empty on backspace. If we are pressing the backspace key, then we should shift and the input gets empty, then we should shift the focus to the previous element. And in order to do that, we just have to call the input refs, and on that get the current value and the index. Okay, so the previous index will be current index minus 1 and call the focus on it. So let's call focus, and I'm just going to add this question mark before this dot, so that it doesn't get scratched even if this comes out to be null or undefined, this thing. Okay, so now this is all the logic that we need, okay, in order for this form to work correctly. So now we have done everything that was needed inside this verification page. So we can just go back and see if I just type something. Okay, it's not accepting any other input except the actually, let me check, because it's not working right now. So here I'm just going to close my server, development server. Let's start it again. Okay, so now it's running on localhost 5173 again. Let the page reload. I'm going to type something, but I'm not able to do anything inside it. So that means we need to again check if all the logic that we have written is correctly placed or not. So let's just make sure everything is correct over here. I'm going to check it line by line. We have the controller, we have passed the key, the name, control, and then we are passing the render. Now inside this input, we have destructured all the fields. Then we have also placed our reference. Type is set to text. Also, I want to do one more thing. That is, I want to set the max length to 1. Okay. So max length will be 1. We have all the class names that are needed. And when the input changes, we are basically calling handle change input. So let me just go back to this handle change input once again and confirm the logic. Here we are getting two things, the event and the index. Okay, the event and the index. So what we are doing over here, we are first of all getting the value from the e dot target dot value. And please make sure that the spelling is correct over here. Okay, e dot target dot value. Otherwise, you will not get the desired result. Okay. Now over here you can see we are doing this digit test. We are checking if it is a valid digit input or not. Okay, and we are calling this test and passing the value that we receive. After that we are setting the value over here, and here actually I'm just going to see, I'm going to add a console log over here. So let me write console.log. Okay, and I'm going to just log the value, and let me write OTP value so I can see it and identify it inside the console. So, and after that we are calling the set value and passing the OTP with the current index that we want to update and the value, and should validate option. Okay. Now I'm just going to save it once again. And if I type some, input inside it, number, I'm trying to type some number inside it, but I'm not able to see it. So inside the console, let's see what is happening. So I actually identified where the error is happening, and that is because instead of writing dollar sign, I actually placed this ampersand sign over here inside the regular expression. So I'm just going to fix it with the dollar sign, and also inside our YAP schema, we are going to also fix that over here. Now we should go back to our, page, and I'm just going to start typing the OTP again, and you can see now it's working. That when we type an input, that means when we type a digit inside the input, it sends the focus to the next. Okay, and this happens till the last. Okay, and when we start removing it, the focus shifts backward. Okay, and I can also click on this resend button. You see it says OTP sent successfully. Okay, and now I must have received another OTP. Okay, so this resend is also working, but there is still one thing that is left, that the timer is not getting displayed over here. So what we should do, we should come over here, and you can also see that this timer property is not, we haven't even used it. So inside this verification page where we have written this resend button, we have to make some changes. And also I would like to fade the color. I would like to fade the color of this recent, because it's text primary when and I want the color to actually be dull like a gray color when it's disabled. So let's do the change over here. I'm going to write after recent inside curly bracket. I'm going to check if recent is disabled. Okay, then we are going to display the time. So we are going to use this backtick because I want to make use of JavaScript over here. So let's write dollar sign curly bracket and then the timer, that means the time that is left, and then s denoting the number of seconds. Okay, and let me also make one change over here, and that will be I'm going to just wrap it inside curly bracket and then backtick. I'm going to check a condition if resend is enabled or disabled. So here I'm going to check, write dollar sign curly bracket, then check resend disabled. If resend is disabled, then the text color should be gray. Otherwise, actually let's set it to text body color. Okay, when it's disabled. Otherwise, it should be text primary. So I'm going to write text primary. Okay, let me write it again. Text primary like this. Okay. Now we should just go back and see if I click on this resend button. Now the timer starts from 60 seconds and back to 0 seconds. Until then I cannot request another OTP. You can also see each time we are hitting this resend, you can see each time we are sending another mail. You see this resend OTP endpoint was hit. Over here again it was hit. Okay, so this is working. And now I want to test if I just type a random OTP, and if I hit the verify button, then what happens? So you see email is invalid or OTP expired because we didn't submitted the correct OTP. So we are getting this error. Now let me submit the correct OTP. So I'm just going to check my mobile phone. Okay. And let me just refresh. So the OTP that I've got right now, this is, so the latest OTP is 6846. I'm just going to write it over here, 6846. And also please note that the OTP that we are sending is only valid for 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to click on verify, and still it's saying that it's not correct. So let me check what is happening. So I'm just going to go back to my backend API, and you can see the auth slash verify endpoint was hit, but it returned this response of 400. Okay, so we are going to actually, let's do one thing. When we are resending the OTP, I'm going to also log it inside my terminal on the backend before sending the mail. Okay, so I'm just going to write console.log and write newly generated newly generated OTP, and that will be our new underscore OTP. Let me write comma over here. Okay. Now we are going to see the newly generated OTP when we resend the mail. So I clicked on resend, and you see OTP sent successfully. I'm going to match the OTP with the one that I receive on email. So this is 5873 that I can see over here. And let me check what I have received on my email. So I just received an email and the OTP is same 5873. Now I'm just going to try to submit this OTP from my client side. Okay. So let me write 5873, click on verify button, and still it's saying that it's not valid. So again, we need to debug this. So let me show you how we are going to proceed with that. We are going to go inside this verify OTP, and let's actually log the OTP. So here I'm just going to write console.log and OTP. Here I'm just going to write OTP received from client. Okay. Now let's see. I'm going to submit that form once again. So I'm just going to write 5873, click on verify, got the error. And here you see 5873 OTP received from client. So that means we are receiving the correct OTP on our mail and we are also submitting it correctly. It's coming over here in the correct format. So what is wrong over here? We need to check the condition, okay, over here. So something is wrong inside this logic, okay, inside this verify OTP. So we are going to first of all, see it line by line. So we are receiving the email and OTP inside request body. Then we are finding one user from the record using the given email. And we are also placing the condition that the OTP expiry time, it should be greater than the current time stamp. So each time we send an OTP, we are also sending the OTP expiry time, which is 10 minutes from the time when the OTP is created. Okay. So let's also see if we get the user over here. Okay. So I'm just going to write console.log and then the user. So I'm just going to write user from verify OTP controller. Okay, so I'm actually adding these kind of strings messages so that I can just identify that specific log that I'm writing. So I'm just going to hit the verify again and see again we got this null. Okay, so the problem is the user. We are getting the user as null. So why this is happening? This field, we need to now check these field names are correct. So here I'm just going to go inside the user model. Let's open it side by side and let's see if we have the OTP expiry time. Yes, the field name is same, OTP expiry time. Let me make sure that these two are same. So I'm just copying and pasting it. And we are actually making use of the email that we are receiving from the user in order to do the query. And let's now do one more thing. We are going to connect to our database using the URI. Okay. So I'm going to actually open up my MongoDB Compass and let me put that over here. Okay. Now this is the database that we are using right now. So I'm just going to go into the test database and then click on the users. Okay. Now I'm actually interested in the last record that was created by me, and that is this user F2019-08581. Okay, so I'm just going to look for this email, and then this specific email. We have this record, Shreyansha. Okay, the password is stored over here, and we also have some OTP expiry time along with the OTP that was hashed. Okay, and the user is coming out as null. So the problem may be due to this email. Okay, so let's just try to find the user only via email and we'll see if this email is creating some kind of problem or not. Okay. So now I'm going to, submit the verify again. And here you see it says something went wrong. So what is actually happening? It says that when the request actually came to this point, post / verify, and we got this 500 response. Actually, the user was found if we found it only using email property. Okay, the user can be seen inside the console log, and then what we are seeing over here is inside this on models user.js line number 71 we got the error. So model user.js line number 71, which is this line when we are calling the to string. So this dot OTP, it's actually undefined. This dot OTP is undefined. So let's see what is happening over here. This logic was run await user dot correct OTP, and we were checking for the OTP. Inside this, you can see there is this OTP field. and also we are getting one OTP from the user. So we are passing both of them to this await user dot correct OTP. Inside user.js, we checked the correct OTP. Okay, so this actually returned its result. And after that, since the OTP was modified, okay, so we are just going to add one more check over here on this before executing this line number 71. I'm just going to check if this dot OTP is not undefined, only then you need to run this logic. Okay, so here I'm just going to write it like this. And also let's do the same thing over here. If this dot password, okay, then run this logic. So I'm just going to move it inside. And why we are doing this? Because you can see inside auth controller when the OTP gets verified successfully, okay, when this step is also completed and we don't, find that the OTP is not correct, then we just set the verified status to true and the OTP to undefined, okay, and after that we are saving the user document. So that is when this OTP was modified, so this thing ran, but the OTP value was undefined, so it cannot be encrypted. So that is why we got that error. Okay, now we have added the check over there, so it will be fine. We can just run our server again, and I can just try verifying it again. And now you see this time it got verified successfully and the user was created. Okay, user was marked as verified inside our database. So if I just go back right now, you see that this verified status is false. If I refresh it, then you see now the verified is true and also the OTP field is gone because OTP was set to undefined. That field was unset. So we have fixed the bugs along the way. When we were integrating our API, we have also fixed many bugs inside this. Now I'm just going to remove all these console logs that we placed in order to, uh, now I'm just going to basically remove all these console logs because we have already debugged our application. So this is it. Now we have fixed all these things, okay, and the integration is also successful. So you see now we are logged into our application once the OTP gets verified. So what we are going to do next is we need to also make sure that we are dispatching the appropriate action when we click on this logout button in the sidebar. So let's go back to our code base, okay, and let me remind you that inside auth.js we have created something called logout user, okay. This is our login user, and you can see over here we have already created logout success. So let's define an action for it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just create that logout user. Okay, so let's define logout user. Okay, so at the bottom of this, I'm going to create another function. Let's export it. I'm going to call it logout user. Okay, and it's going to again receive something called navigate. Now why we are passing this navigator over here, because when the user gets logged out we need to send them to the login page once again. Okay, so I'm just going to write a higher order function over here. So let's write return, and this will be an asynchronous function, so I'm going to mark it as async, and then I'm going to write over here dispatch comma get state. Okay, let's make it an arrow function. Then I'm going to write try and catch block over here. So let's write try catch, and inside this catch block I'm just going to simply log the error to the console. So I'm going to write console.log error, and in the try block I'm going to dispatch logout success. Okay, so let's dispatch logout success, and let me remind you once again what this logout success is going to do. So you can see at the top that this logout success is going to first of all set the token value to null and also is logged into false. Okay, then here I'm going to write my navigation logic. So I will write navigate, and we have to navigate the user back to the slash route. Okay, and also I want to show a toast notification saying that the user was logged out successfully. So let's write toast.success, and here I'm just going to write logged out, logged out successfully. Okay, logged out successfully. Then we can just format this, and let's go to our sidebar. So inside layout, we have sidebar.jsx. And in this button, sign out, you can see right now we are just, doing the navigation. So I'm going to remove that navigate. And instead, I'm going to create a dispatcher at the top of this function. So let's write const dispatch, and that should be equal to use dispatch. Use dispatch is a hook coming from React Redux. You can see over here. Okay. Now we need to make use of that dispatch inside this on click on this sign out button. So I'm just going to write logout user, and you can see this logout user is going to be imported from Redux license auth, and inside this we need to pass the navigate. Okay, so now if I click on that button, the state will be updated. I'm going to actually show that to you. So at that inside our Redux dev tools, you can see right now inside auth we have a token, and also this user is also stored. We also see this is logged in property set to true. So what we are going to do now, if I click on this button, then you see we got kicked back to the login screen, and also we see logged out successfully. So if I check my Redux store again, here you can see now the token is null and also is logged in and set to false. So that means we were logged out successfully. So I'm going to actually check if the login functionality is working or not. So let me write my email, okay, over here. Then I'm going to just type in my password, okay. Then I'm going to click on sign in. You see, right now we are getting some error that email or password is incorrect, but I'm sure that I'm typing the correct email and password. So we need to go back to our backend and see if everything is correct over here. So actually the password is getting hashed inside this PaySafe hook. And over here, I see that there is a problem. We shouldn't have this or condition, because if we have or condition, and in the case when we have OTP and the password inside our schema, then this condition will turn out to be true. So what is going to happen when the password or the OTP has been hashed? It will be hashed even once more. Okay, and that is going to make a problem for us, because in that case this correct password is always going to return false. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are going to change this or condition to end. So here I'm going to write double ampersand, which means the end operator. Now, what we need to do now is we need to go back to our database, search for the particular record that we created using this email field. I'm going to actually delete this user. Okay. Then we're going to sign up once again. And after that, we'll see if the login functionality is working. Okay. So I'm just going to go to the sign up page. Let's once again enter the full name. Okay, let's enter the email, which is our F 2019, this email. Okay, this is actually a valid email, that is why I'm using it, because we need to receive an OTP in order to create the account. Okay, now after filling this form, I'm clicking on create account. Once again, I got no OTP. Let me check what's the OTP. So over here I should receive the OTP. Yes, I got it. Let me see. Okay, so it's 4869. I'm going to enter it. 4869. I'm going to verify it. Now you see email is verified. Once again, I'm going to log out and then I'll try to log in again. Okay, let's fill in the email once again. F 2019. Now, in the password, I'm going to write 12345678. That is my dummy password. Okay. And now you see we are logged in successfully. So along the way, again, we had to, refactor a lot of errors that we, created during the development of this application. This kind of things can happen. Okay. You just have to, keep patience and think positively. Okay, like where this could have gone wrong, because I instantly knew that if the password is not matching but I'm entering the right password, then there should be some problem in the hashing. So I came over here and looked on the hashing part. Okay, and I figured out, okay, there was, I was using the wrong operator, so I fixed it. So now the authentication is working completely. Okay, that means we can log into our application, we can create a new user, and also we are authenticating it with the help of our email. Okay, so we are making sure that all the users that are signing up to our application, they have unique emails and also valid emails. We can also log out of our application. So now the authentication part is completed. So the next part is to complete our let me show you the profile section. So I'm just going to log in once more. Okay, and here the next step is to integrate this profile form where we can upload the user image and update these things like the name, job title, bio, and select the country. Okay. Then we are also going to integrate this form where we can, update our password from inside the application once we are logged in. So this is what we are going to do in the next video. And after that is done, we are going to straight way go to building our one-to-one chat. Okay. And we'll see how to, send different kinds of messages, render messages, see this list, everything. Okay. So the fun part is just about to begin. We have to just complete the profile section. Okay. And already you can see the light and dark mode is working perfectly. So that's it for this particular video. It's running very long, so I'm just going to stop it over here, and I'll see you in the next one.